Hello, my fellow movie fans, and welcome to another show of Feast of Films Theatre, today starring Matthew Black and Ethan R. Hill. There, that's the intro.
Oh, yeah. Classic. Classic. What's going on, my fellow movie fans? Welcome to A Feast of Films Star Wars Episode 2 Special, Part 2. That's right, we're back. We're going through the rest of the movie. And all I can say is, I got a bad feeling about this. I'm Matt Black, and with me as always is Ethan R. Hill. Now, let's get back to it.
So the clones look really cool, though. I love the design of the clones in this one, and I almost prefer it to the design of the clones in Episode 3. Because, like, while I like the Stormtrooper, I love the Stormtrooper design. I don't think I've talked about that yet. The Stormtroopers, honestly, are one of my favorite media designs of anything in any media. They're just
classic,
look,
man.
Even just like the regular looking armor is great, but then you get into the diversified designs of like the Snow Trooper and the Scout Trooper.
Yeah.
I'll admit by the sequel trilogy they get a little weird. Like I like the
standard Stormtrooper.
Yeah, the standard one in Force Awakens I really like.
Yeah. I agree.
Then,
I like that design a lot.
But then you get the Flame Troopers, and they kind of look a little weird. But, like, for me, even with, like, the way the troopers look in Episode 3, they're a little too blocky. Whereas in Episode 2, just the way their masks look and the way, like, they have that fin on the top, they look sleek, and they look new and shiny, and I love it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's cool, and I wish that design would have carried over a bit more. I understand why it didn't, because, you know, we have to evolve the armor. And again, that's more of a problem with Episode 3 is how much it tries to line up with Episode 4, even though it's 20 years later.
Yeah.
But that's a discussion for the next special.
For sure.
But just that scene where, like, the clones are all marching out when Obi-Wan finishes his tour.
And he's looking above everything.
And you hear, like, the music as they're Martha bum, 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 which is... Wait, that's the theme from the Trade Federation, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. They use the Trade Federation theme. I have no clue. I mean, like... Maybe it's just to foreshadow the impending danger of the, group, but yeah. And then they use the Imperial March at the end of the movie.
At the end, which, like, that's cool, too, but it's also... It's a weird choice. They almost should have done, like, a variation on the Imperial March where it's, like, in a major key rather than the... Like, I don't know how you do it, but, like, something like that. But... I mean, that was also well over dude, it's almost been 20 years since Episode 2.
I know.
Isn't that crazy?
That's, like, to think of that movie as a 20-year-old movie actually makes me, like, exhausted. It makes me feel tired.
I think that's awesome. I think that's really cool. Like, it's just like, wow, that's...
Like, it blows my mind how fast time goes sometimes. Sometimes,
and yet how
time goes. Yeah, and then other days it's like, what's taking so long? Let's get a move on here.
Man, I'm looking at my notes and it's literally just bouncing between like, oh man, Obi-Wan stuff is great. Anakin sucks. Obi-Wan's great. Because like my next note is like anything with like Obi-Wan and Jango Fett. Gold. I love it.
That was really good. Yeah.
Like. Even just, like, their scene together when they first meet, that little, like...
Interaction?
Well, and, like, so...
The chess game.
Do you remember the books? We talked about, like, the Obi-Wan and Anakin books.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Boba Fett ones?
I do not remember the Boba Fett ones.
So,
no,
there was
a
Boba Fett series. There's a kid series for Boba Fett.
Mm-hmm.
When he's growing up, and the first book takes place during Episode 2. The entire first book is Episode 2 from Boba Fett's perspective.
Point of view, okay.
It's amazing. It's so good. And it's about this kid who, like, he thinks his dad's the coolest, and then he watches, like...
A Jedi cut his head off.
Well, yeah, but it also explores, like, Jango and Zam's friendship, and how much, like, it actually killed Jango when he had to kill Zam.
Yeah.
Because Boba goes for a walk in the rain, because he's like, oh, that's how people, like, there's a sentence where it's like, you know, when you walk in the rain, you know, people can't tell that you're crying at all.
Yeah.
And then he comes back and he finds that Jango is also drenched. And he's like, oh, my dad must have gone for a walk in the rain too. Mm-hmm. And so it shows there's emotion to that character. And then it shows, like, his perspective of even, like, watching the fight between, like, the mental fight between Obi-Wan and Jango.
Yeah.
Like, and he's commenting on where it's, like, basically, it's like, yeah, Dad, get him with, like, you know, a mental right hook. And, like, it's just such a cool perspective to look at that scene.
Interesting.
Like, it's really, it was one of, like, as a kid, it put, like, that whole scene in a new context because it added that layer of, like, oh, so that's what's going on, that mental sparring, right?
Yeah.
And, like, you can see it. You can 100% see it when you watch the scene, just, like, how polite they're being to each other, but it's, like, backhandedly
But you know, it's
polite.
just, like, yeah. Trying to, like, coerce the other guy into the corner, right?
It's a good build-up to their actual physical fight.
Yeah.
Which, again, I love. I love their fight on Kamino because it's just two guys trying to do their best, and they're both not good at fighting.
Well, they're both just not good at dealing with the situation that
because,
they're
like,
in.
well, it's like you have that moment where Obi-Wan gets his hand, like, he's calling his lightsaber, and then he gets his hands like that, and just, like, looks, what? No. And then, like,
the lightsaber flies by him.
and Django's like, yeah, I got the upper hand. And then Django gets kicked, and Obi-Wan's like, yeah, I got the upper hand. And then he's like,
oh,
not good.
Not good, yeah. And, like
dude, just
the back and forth between them is great. Like, it's not just, like, a one-sided fight. Like, they're both fairly equally matched. Like, obviously, Obi-Wan without his lightsaber in that situation, right? But
he
they're
still
both
holds his own, though.
But yeah, and they both do a great job fighting. And then the starships, it's the same thing. Like, these guys, it's very clear.
I love
these
that
guys are on the
space
same level. And it's just, a lot of their fighting and a lot of their conflict is even mentally, right? Like, Obi-Wan's not like, oh, I'm going to beat him in a starfighter, like, fight, but, like, to deceive that he's actually been destroyed, right? So he can go land.
Well,
so a lot of it, it's just really interesting back and forth on 3 different levels.
The seismic charges are one of the coolest weapon introductions.
Cool. Yeah.
Like, just, and the way the sound design is, too, where it just goes silent for that second before basically like a slap bass sound. Boom. Just amazing. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's so good. And just,
that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. That whole little, like, that back and forth cat and mouse battle through the asteroids. Love it.
Yeah. Well, and dude, again, it as you said, it's reminiscent of even their verbal jousting to... They literally go from just, like, a verbal fight to a physical fight to a space fight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And, like, that's their arc. And I like that. And it almost would have been better if that's who the final showdown was with in the arena.
Obi-Wan and Jango. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which one finally gets the final upper hand? Yeah. I guess they just had to give Mace Windu something to do.
Well, the thing that I struggle with that, though, is that Mace Windu was too cold about killing Jango.
Yeah, he just gave him that look. Motherfucker. He gave that Samuel L. Jackson look.
Whereas that Obi-Wan would have had some kind of remorse. Obi-Wan would have had, like, I did what I had to do, but I didn't like that I had to do that, and I think that would have been a cool extra thing that added to the weight, especially of when he fights Anakin.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to kill people. Right? Like, I think that would have made... Because, like, especially if you... And, like, that fight with Mace Windu, too, was kind of anticlimactic, whereas I think you could have had a really good, very big climactic fight where basically Obi-Wan had no choice.
Yeah, I agree.
It's either kill or be killed, and I think that would have made it stronger. But for just looking at what we got, though, that arc still works. Right?
It does.
It lacked a satisfying conclusion.
I agree with you 100%, man. I agree, and I honestly think Mace Windu just got the final kill because they had to give him something to do. If they're going to bring him there, they had to have him kill someone important, right? Like, they had to have him in some sort of conflict. I think, again, from a narrative perspective, it would have been way more satisfying to have Obi-Wan in a final conflict with Jango Fett. And it would have made sense because their conflict has been built up through the movie.
Well, and there's almost a mutual respect between the two.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of where it's like, you could even have had, like, a more personal moment where, like, Obi-Wan's like, I don't want to kill you. And Jango's like, you won't.
Yeah.
But Obi-Wan, and then Obi-Wan does, right? And then And then once again, from Boba Fett's perspective on that, it's this another revenge thing, and that you could have explored then in the Obi-Wan series, where it's like, so Darth Maul tries to come in to fight him. Okay, now Boba Fett's coming for revenge.
Like,
and
all
just
these
like
people you kill, your ghosts are coming back for you, man.
And that would have been a good theme, but George wasn't thinking that far ahead.
Oh yeah, no, but
also, I think George just likes Samuel Jackson, and that's why, like, number one, that's why he's in the movie, and I think that's also like
why he got his own purple lightsaber, because he wanted one.
And that's man, I don't care. That's great. I think, and that also opened up the floodgates
to all the other colors.
And I love that. I love the idea that the kyber crystals are just different colors, and I think that's great. The motivation for Padme and Anakin going to Tatooine is really weird. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm maybe jumping way ahead, but I don't know what notes you had in between.
Just wait, let me just see here. I do have a couple more notes going backwards a little bit, kind of back to that same time as Obi-Wan and Jango Fett are fighting on Kamino, I think.
Yeah.
And that's like that, again, like I just have a note like, oh, the middle drags. Like, the middle does drag. Like, once you got the Naboo stuff, it drags. Like, even Obi-Wan doing his investigation, like, while, like, there's a lot of cool things in there, like, that just part of the movie just like, it's just so slow. I think it's Anakin and Padme's fault, but
exactly, if we only had the Obi-Wan stuff, that was
it'd be a different story.
On,
yeah, it'd be a different story. Yeah.
Well, dude, it would cut out at least 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if not more. But, like, my next note's like another, like, terrible, cringy Anakin Skywalker thing. I said, Anakin's poetry is terrible. So, like, when they're in that scene at night and he's, like, talking to her, like, before she's like, our lives would be a lie. He's like, I can't breathe.
My heart is like a fire.
Yeah. I don't even remember what he said, dude, exactly.
It's like that. It's like
dude,
that family.
His poetry is horrendous.
Do you watch Family Guy?
From time to time. I haven't seen anything.
Have you seen, like, you haven't seen the Thanksgiving so Joe's son comes back from fighting in the war.
I don't know.
And he's written some poetry or something like that.
Yeah.
And Brian's like, can I get you to, can we like do anything to get you to stop reading that? And he's like, no. And he's like, if I guess one of the lines in it, will you not read it? He's like, I guess so. And it's like, something that about fire burns as hot as ice.
Yeah.
And he just folds up the poetry and puts it away. And that's the level of poetry that Anakin was trying to deliver.
To communicate. It was really bad.
Like, oh, no, man. Like, it just was not good. I can't breathe when I'm around you, and when I'm apart from you, it's even worse.
I'm suffocating. Yeah, it was like, it was terrible. So, again...
Really, Anakin? Because it seems like you're the...
And that's funny, too, because he started getting less creepy, at least at that point. Like, when they were having supper, he was less creepy. When they were having
kind of charming.
Yeah, like, he had a little moment there at supper time. I was like, good for you, Anakin.
Doing the cute Force thing.
Good for not being a super creep and using the Force to cut her fruit. Good idea.
And that lasted long.
And that didn't last long, because the next exact moment, they're in this dark room with the fireplace, and, like, it's not necessarily being, like, creepy in a way, but it's just like, your poetry is terrible. It's just, again, another element of Anakin Skywalker that is just not very good. Another point I thought was interesting was how, just in, as far as like his outfits and the costume design goes, how Anakin's outfit actually reflect his change through the movies. Like, they just get darker and darker and darker each episode till he's Vader. Like, Anakin, like in episode 1, he's wearing that very beige, and even when he gets the Jedi robes, it's the normal like beige. This one, it's like brown with the black leather kind of, accents. Then the next one, it's like a darker brown. Like, it's dark brown, man. Like, it's almost black, but not quite. But still has the black accents. And then it's Vader. So it's like, oh, I'm like, that's kind of interesting how they...
It's not subtle.
That.
It's
just interesting. I don't know if I would have done that necessarily, but, like, I don't know. It was interesting. But one other point,
it's really funny.
Go ahead.
It's really funny when Anakin's like, I'm being suffocated, but he's the one smothering Padme.
Yeah. I'm suffocated. I can't breathe. She's like, you're literally smothering me right now. And
oh my gosh, Anakin, back off.
Then he literally suffocates her in the next movie. Chokes her.
When I'm around you, I can't breathe. Anakin, I can't breathe either.
Like, this isn't a poem. This is not a metaphor. Literally, can't breathe right now. Oh,
I
man.
can't breathe. I can't breathe either, Padme. Trust me.
One last note before we get to Tatooine here. Just going back to Obi-Wan and Jango Fett's fight, like when he kicks like Jango Fett down, right, and then Obi-Wan slides off, and Jango Fett releases his wire, right, and Obi-Wan's like free falling down, and dude, he untangles that shit real quick, like real quick, and then throws it and like hooks it on, like I can't untangle headphones that I put in my pocket for 10 seconds that quick, man. Like he untangled
but you don't have
that.
the Force.
Dude, does the Force help you untangle things? I don't know. Like, as he's falling, look at that mess. And then he's like, throws it, man. Problem solved.
If you can see slightly in the future, I think yes. I think you could untangle things faster.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
I think
but also,
so.
while free falling, like, it just doesn't seem ideal. Anyway, I just thought that, again, was funny. Back to Tatooine.
No, like, to me, the biggest thing is... it just feels really weird how they decide to go there. Where it's like he has a nightmare that he's been having for a while, and he never thought to be like, hey, Jedi, can I like go back to Tatooine and make sure my mom's okay?
I feel like that's part of the movie they didn't show us. I have a feeling that even if he wanted to go check on his mom, he would not be allowed. Because the Jedi are not allowed connections like that, right? So... because like you would think if he was allowed to do that, Obi-Wan would be like, dude, why don't you just go check on your mom then? Like, let's go. Let's pack up our shit. We'll just do a trip to Tatooine right now. It'll take us like 10 minutes, man. No problem. But he doesn't offer that. And he just instructs him to, like, clear his mind or whatever, right? Or dreams will pass. So I just feel like the Jedi would not really necessarily be on board with him going to check his mom. So I think that's one aspect that they don't really tell you in the film, but I think it is implied.
I guess so. It's just... I don't know. It could have been better. Could have been better, and it just wasn't. And it was just weird. Man, it's just weird how they went. I don't know. I just found the motivation was unclear, and I guess it's what you said though, where it's just like it's implied, but I feel like it should have been more of like.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense too. Like when there is no other Jedi, it's just him. He's like, I'm gonna go check on my mom. Like there ain't no one telling him he can't. Like there's no one there who says he can, right?
But I'm not gonna go say Obi-Wan later in the film. That's a Padme
Anakin's
choice.
kind of a dick. Whatever.
Well, no, and Padme needs to go and save her old friend.
Yeah, that's true. Because that's old friend. I mean, okay, you gotta say this though. At least Tatooine was interesting. That's where at least the movie picked back up for that group.
Like, kinda, but it's also massively problematic.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's not great.
It's interesting,
like,
though.
Like, also, okay, during that entire thing, though, growing up, and even to this day, like, Tatooine and Geonosis looks way too similar, and I kept getting confused as to where we were.
Yeah. With the spires and stuff, right? Like, when they'd shift and the first shot was the spire, I wasn't sure what planet you're on. Yeah. No, I gotcha.
But, like, okay, so some of the problems I have with Tatooine before you talk about what's good about it.
Okay.
Unless you want to reverse that.
No, go ahead.
First and foremostly, like the Watto stuff, I didn't mind. It makes sense that he'd go back and see Watto because like that.
That's who owned his mom. Yeah.
I laughed a bit at this time because it's like Klieg Lars lost his wife but kept the droid. And then Prosser pointed out to me that like Anakin just takes C-3PO with him.
Yeah, I have a note on that too. I'm like, did they just jack 3PO? I'm like, I guess technically it was still his droid, but like, still.
I guess maybe it's like just they're kind of like, hey, we feel really, really bad about what happened to your mom. Take your droid. But it also doesn't make sense that like Owen doesn't remember. Like I know he looks different, but he has the exact same name.
Yeah.
Like. So
I guess maybe they just assume in such a big galaxy, if he leaves planet, they'd never see him again. So we just assumed it was not. Do you ever think? Here's a question: do you ever think droids would ever have the same like call sign? Like throughout the entire galaxy, like there's no droids that were ever made that would be like if Anakin made C-3PO in a shop, couldn't someone else have in an actual factory have made a C-3PO too? Like that's just what I'm curious about.
That's a confusing thing, though, because there's, in the Trade Federation, there's, I think, TC-14.
Mm-hmm.
That's the silver one that looks exactly like 3PO.
Yeah.
So it can't be a model number thing if they look the exact same.
Well,
Like, I don't know what
guess.
determines a droid's name in
Because you have like
Star
R2, R4, R whatever, and then they have some of them are different names too. I'm just not
But then
sure.
R2
Like,
and
yeah,
R2 and R4 look the exact same with a slightly different paint job, but then
Yeah.
R5 looks completely different.
different. Yeah,
But then he's an R, like, because, like, so the one that blows up in episode 4 that they first buy initially is technically an R5 unit, but Luke refers to him as an R2 unit. And, like, that's the naming system is just bizarre.
it just
and
makes
I don't
no
get
sense.
It.
Yeah, so
I try not to think about it.
I'm just curious if like droids could share a same call sign. You know what I mean? Like, so like,
Like,
maybe it
maybe.
wouldn't be unreasonable to come across multiple C3POs at some point in time. Like, I'm just curious because yeah, like, or else you'd be like, why wouldn't you notice them? But then I put myself in the universe. I'm like, okay, so if I lived on one planet out of thousands of planets that are literally inhabited by people that we're all very much aware of, and my droid flies off planet 30 years before that, like, am I going to be like, shit, this is my droid? Or am I just going to assume this is just happens to be a droid who is almost exactly like mine? Do other 3PO units sound like 3PO? Like, yeah, there's just a lot of questions that I don't really know, but the answer to. But yeah, no, they totally jacked 3PO at the end of the day.
If it was, like, built so specifically by Anakin, too, like, you think that it would be, like...
A unique model.
Yeah.
Like, there wouldn't be any other droids that look like him when there are, in fact, tons of droids that look like him. Unless he just followed some blueprints he bought. That seems likely.
Are you kidding? He built his own pod racer. He clearly put the same amount of work into that pod racer as he did that droid. How did he do that while working a full-time job that he wasn't getting paid for?
Yeah, it's strange. It's strange.
But, like, there's that. Then there's the whole, Anakin Skywalker child murderer.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that whole thing where it's just like, man, I'm mad about my mom dying.
We shouldn't be surprised he killed the younglings, to be honest.
No, but we should be surprised that Padme let him put 2 babies inside of her. Oh,
To
man,
be fair, it was
Anakin,
at the same time.
Anakin, you know what really gets me going? When you tell me about the childs you killed, the children you killed. Oh, like it does, and she doesn't react like, Anakin, I'm scared of you. She's like, oh, poor baby, you killed them because they killed your mom.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, like, you should be alarmed. And and then, so there's that whole thing. And then there's when he's killing them and Yoda has that vision where it's like
Qui-Gon's
Qui-Gon
voice.
saying Anakin. But then who's saying no? Who's saying no? Because that's not Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon doesn't sound like no. Or is that a sand person dying?
I don't know.
No, it doesn't make... It's some of the weirdest sound design. And
Yeah.
it just still bugs me, man. Like, it's just... There's a lot that I have problems with there. Although, like... Robot Chicken has a great sketch with it. Where it's, Anakin brings back his mom. And, like, it's that dramatic scene of, like, carrying her body in.
Yeah.
And then Lars whispers something to Beru. And they just start laughing, and then they tell Padme, and then it's like, well, Owen said,
Oh, I think I saw
guess
that,
this
yeah.
I guess this makes you little orphan Annie now.
Yeah.
Hey man, it's just tragedy plus time. That's what comedy is. No time has passed. I'm holding her dead body in my arms.
Yeah, I saw that one. I did see that
It's so
episode,
good,
yeah.
man. Like, I think I pitched it. I think I plugged it last time. I'll plug it again. The Star Wars Robot Chicken specials are the greatest. They're so good. They're better than the Family Guy ones. They're just perfection as Star Wars fans. Like, they're sketches. They're not super reliant on just doing a one-for-one parody. It's just a bunch of sketches. It's so good.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, man, like, all the... I don't know. All the stuff on Tatooine I didn't drive with. It didn't sit well with me. It was just too... It still was slow. It was still... I could skip over it and not really miss any of it.
I think, yeah, for me, Tatooine at least was like, I found it interesting. Once they go to Tatooine, the film picks up again for me. Because that's, you're having Tatooine, you're also dealing with Obi-Wan on Geonosis, right? Like, that's your two planetary shifts. Like, they move over to these two other planets. And, like, I just found Tatooine way more interesting. And it actually does more for their character relationship between Anakin and Padme than the whole Naboo stuff. Like, when you think about an actual person and what builds relationships and what draws people close and what makes couples unbreakable. And it's not like, oh, they're rolling around in fields with flowers and jelly beans with legs, let me ride them, and uncomfortable conversations and bad poetry. That's not what connects people. It's
adversity.
It's the challenges and battles and the fights that we have to fight together. So the fact that, like, they went to Tatooine and Geonosis, like, that actually did more for their relationship from a believable, realistic standpoint than that whole Naboo stuff. Like, you could cut that out. It wouldn't matter. Like, get rid of it. It was useless. Because even look at look at Han Solo and Leia in Episode 5, right? And even, I guess, Episode 4. What built their relationship eventually together wasn't like they had moments where they rolled around in the snow on Hoth and they were so lovey and loving each other and
they just had a snowball
hung out
fight.
by some tauntauns. You know what I mean? No, it was the diversity and the extreme situations that they were put in and they dealt with together. That's what builds relationships, especially when you're talking about film. Because you don't have the time to build, like, we went on a date for 3 years. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have time to do that in a movie. Like, it's conflict that really draws couples together. So, that's where I felt like Tatooine was more interesting than Naboo for sure.
It's one of those things for me where I feel like the only thing I dislike about that, too, is that Anakin gets coddled after he murdered a bunch of people. If there was even a moment where she's caring for him because his mom died, I get that. But then even show a bit of hesitation then when he's like, so I didn't just kill the men, I killed, like, the women and the children for no reason. And even have more of, like, a, oh no. Like, because she still loves him and cares about him, that's great, but you can still have concern about someone while... Like, you can still be concerned about someone's actions while loving them.
Well, yeah, if they're murdering a whole village of people, you should be concerned.
But instead, and that's the problem I have with it, is it very much dehumanizes the Tusken Raiders. And that's where I really like The Mandalorian, where suddenly, like, Tusken Raiders show up. Yeah, and, like, they just, like, they negotiate with them. Like, and I like that aspect of it, because at the end of the day, if I'm correct, Tusken Raider is similar to Mandalorians, where it's a culture, not really a specific race.
I'm not specifically sure on that.
I think so, or at least it was maybe back in, like, the older expanded universe.
Yeah, maybe in the expanded universe at one point. Well, like, and then, yeah, I think the Tusken Raiders, especially in Tatooine, are kind of like the boogeyman. They've always been the boogeyman, right? And especially at that point, they were never really humanized before that. They were still the boogeyman from Episode 4. And you know what I mean? And, like, the only time you saw him again was Episode 1, where they shot at a pod. So they've only been really portrayed as brutes, as monsters, as people who will kill you without giving you a second thought, right? Like, there was no really humanizing them at that point, like, when they made this film. So for him to go and slaughter a bunch of people who are already a bunch of a-holes, to go and kill a bunch of murderers, you're like, cool, man. Like, I don't know. But, like, then again, I guess you take the women and children into that, right? Then that's the problem there. Yeah. That's where he goes too far.
But there's no repercussions, or, like, the most you have is Yoda being like, ooh, maybe some bad stuff's happening. And it's like, okay, but, like...
Yoda should have had a conversation with that kid. Like, Yoda should have, like, dug into that. Like, that seems extremely problematic for Yoda to just be like, wow, I felt incredible pain. I'm just not going to talk to him about it, though. Like, talk about sweeping it under the rug, man. Like, like, holy. I guess, too, like, just saying your point with, like, Padme, I think there was a moment of hesitation, or a moment where she's shocked at what she's hearing, but I don't think it was enough. Like, I will give him credit that there was, like, there's a face, and there's a moment where she's like, holy shit. But it's not enough. Like, it's not, like, it doesn't last long enough. Like, there's not enough of that concern.
Well, or even, like, honestly, even if it was a thing more of like where she's horrified, Anakin sees how horrified she is, and then realizes what he's done.
Yeah.
And realizes, like, because I want to say the scene just kind of ends after he's like, I hate them. Yeah. And that's kind of like, and like to me, I think it should have been more powerful. Like if he's like, I hate them, and then he like realizes what he said and how he's sounding, and has like this breakdown. Mm-hmm. And then that brings them together because he's realized that he's a monster. He's just as much of a monster as he thought the Sand People were.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been a really good humanizing moment. But unfortunately, we didn't get that because...
because that. But, like, and then, honestly, like, when you put that whole, like, Tatooine is kind of, like, it takes place kind of, like, in the middle of the film. Roughly, give or take, right?
Yeah.
Like, it almost literally is the heart of the film. And if this film had one job to do, it was killing Anakin's mother. Like, and all the steps you look from going from episode 1 to episode 3, if it only could do one thing to develop the character, like, towards Darth Vader, that was the one step it had to do. Like, even the Padme stuff, like, whatever. Like, you know, he loves her, we get it, cool. But to kill his mom is the next step in what started with Qui-Gon Jinn 10 years ago, right? That fear of loss, like, he feels that he doesn't have the power to change things, that he can't save people, right? Like, Shmi's death is a key part of this story when it comes to Anakin. Not only does it, again, like I said, reaffirm his fear of loss, it now, in his head, equals death justifies slaughter. Because it was the death of his mom that justifies slaughter, right? And then later on in episode 3, it's the death, you know, the impending death of Padme that justifies the slaughter of all the Jedi, right? Like, that justifies slaughter. Also in his head, the hunger for power, no matter the cost, right? Like, because he feels that he's underpowered or empowered, or like he couldn't save Qui-Gon, he couldn't save his mom, like he wasn't strong enough. So now he has that again for that hunger for power, and it's not necessarily for him to be like, I'm Lord of everything. Ultimately, it's a good reason because he wants to save people, but he's willing. But the cost to get there, he's willing to burn the world pretty much to get there, right? And then also that moment when he loses his mom, it completely, as a human, attaches him to Padme, which is literally all he has left. If he loses Padme, he loses, like, that's all he has left. Like, he has Obi-Wan, but we all know the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan is nothing compared to the relationship between Anakin and Qui-Gon, Anakin and his mom, Anakin and Padme, right? Like, he was willing to kill Obi-Wan himself. Like, you know what I mean? He wasn't working to save him. He was willing to kill Obi-Wan himself.
Do you think that Anakin's mom's death would have been better or worse if Palpatine orchestrated it? Like, not through the Sand People necessarily, but just like he somehow orchestrated her death to further his own agenda. Do you think that would have been better, or do you think that would have been worse? Or pretty much about the same level?
I think it would have been... Well, from Anakin's standpoint, I don't think it would have changed a lot. I mean, of course, he wouldn't know Palpatine did it. I think from our view of Palpatine, it would have been very impactful. Because it would have been showing just how far he's willing to go to manipulate this young Jedi, right? And again, though, like... And you could have done something like that if you got rid of all the Naboo shit. You know what I mean? Like, maybe they spent a little time on Naboo, but you cut rid of all that crap that, honestly... That doesn't build relationships. That showed nothing. That was nothing. That was nothing.
Dude, I got it. Literally. So, like, they go to Tatooine to find his mom.
Yeah.
And they find her and she's fine. But then there's an attack on Padme's life. But instead, Shmi gets killed instead.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
And specifically, he wouldn't blame Padme for that.
Yeah.
Right? But the thing is that what you could do with that is you have it set up, because Palpatine is 100% orchestrating the attacks on Padme. Mm-hmm. But the entire time, that was essentially a ruse to get them into the same room so that he could go after Anakin's mom to make him turn to the dark side.
Yeah.
And that, I think, would have worked way better than all the Naboo crap.
That would have been interesting. That would have been interesting in its own way. Like, even just like the levels Palpatine went through to just get Anakin and Padme together, right? Like, the whole idea of, like, them trying to take out Padme, like, Palpatine didn't care about killing Padme. Like, it wasn't in his best interest for Padme to die. Like,
it was in his best interest to get her out of the way to get to get her out of the way so he would get emergency powers.
I think it was more of an idea. Like, okay, so like, and this is all like implied, right? Because nothing in the movie ever says these things directly. So I'm not saying like, oh, this is how it was or blah blah blah. I'm just speculating into this whole area of unknown.
Yeah.
Like, I do think Anakin would have had conversations with Palpatine about Padme, about his mom, right? And Palpatine obviously recognizing the weakness that Anakin has for Padme to bring them together, right? I think this was a ruse, like part of that was a ruse to not just get Padme out of the way for the vote and all that stuff, right? Like, I think that was part of it, but I also think it was to bring Anakin and Padme together so that they had a bond, and then Palpatine could use that to manipulate Anakin even further. It was harder for Palpatine to manipulate Anakin through his mom, because his mom obviously was not on Coruscant. You have someone who is on Coruscant, however, easier access for manipulation. I do think that was part of it too. But again, that's
also
all,
killing off.
That's all just, I don't know.
Speculation.
Yeah, it's all speculation.
But also, killing off his mom and forcing them together even more is also, that to me, that's another angle of it.
Yeah. And
that'd
like
be something, another addition.
And I don't think Palpatine would have known like bringing them together would ultimately mean the end of Anakin's mother. But like once he did find out about the dreams, like obviously he used that too when it came to manipulating Anakin, when it came to Padme's dreams, right? That was his window of opportunity because he knew the result of what happened to his mother. So it's clear that these characters are having a lot of conversations and sharing information off the screen that we don't know about, right? And it's kind of hinted at and implied, but you're never quite sure. But no, I think that would have been a really interesting idea to have Palpatine be the one orchestrating Shmi's death. But I think again, it had to result in that slaughter. Anakin had to lose his shit. For like, I just think that moment created also that mental bridge for Anakin, that death of a one I love justifies like slaughtering people. Not just men, but women and children. So when it came to the Jedi, he wasn't like, I'm just killing the male Jedi or the fighters. Like, no,
I'm killing everybody.
He was down to kill the kids because he's like, nope, I have to save my wife. So this justifies it. You know what I mean? Like, this is justification for it. So I think there's a lot more in depth when it came to that Tatooine, specifically that part of the Tatooine part of the film, I guess. Necessary, and that's just kind of dealing with like the human emotions of that and like the mentality and the psychology of like how people, you know, connect things and experience and deal with those type of traumas, right? And how that was going to pay off later on when he's faced with another similar situation of losing his wife, you know, after he'd already just lost his mom. So I thought that was a pretty important part. I think again, like we talked about earlier, the ideas are great, the concept's good. The execution could have been better.
It's the execution.
It's always the execution with this film, right? And even when Anakin's saying, like, oh, I killed them all, and, you know, Padme's comforting him, it was just, I thought that motion was at least, that was probably the most genuine I've seen Hayden Christensen act, like, in this movie up to that point, for sure. Everything was really creepy, really uncomfortable, really, you know, all those really terrible things we've been laughing at for the last 2-3 hours. And this moment actually felt like a genuine moment of anger and frustration and pain. It still came across a bit whiny, you know, to his Anakin ways, but at least in that moment, I'm like, okay, I can feel somewhat what you're feeling. But again, execution could have been better, but this was like the heart of the movie, right? Like this was, I was telling my wife, I said, this movie is like the connecting the dots. There's not a lot this movie has to say. It's not like episode 1 where I was like, we were looking at all these different narrative things and we're like, oh, look at this. And like, this makes sense here. This movie doesn't have that much to say. It was more or less like tech stuff, but it was just literally, this is the next dot on the journey to Darth Vader. And this film was just connecting that dot. And that's all this moment was. This was the dot that had to be connected. And the rest of the movie just still happened as it happened, right? Like, it didn't really affect the rest of the movie. It's just, they needed to connect that dot for Anakin. I also have like another question for you, just when it comes to like Anakin's relationship with the Jedi and like what happened with his mom. Do you think that Anakin, part of him blames Obi-Wan and the Jedi for his mother's death? Not in a direct way, but kind of like how we were talking about before, where he would have, from their code, wouldn't have been allowed to go and help her.
I think it's at the end of the day, and they don't explore this, and they should have. There's probably some survivor's guilt that kicks in, because it's the idea of that he is probably beating himself up, saying, "I should have been there. I should have saved my mom. If the Jedi didn't take me away, I could have saved her. I could have stopped this from happening." So I think that's a part of it. I think it's a big part of it. I just think it's kind of overlooked. I think it's not really explored. So I think there's a bit of blame for the Jedi, but I think it's also a mixture of blame but self
blame as well, and not necessarily like he blames the Jedi because he was left to be raised as a Jedi. I just mean that, like, when he was having those dreams, like, he couldn't just go back and check on her. You know what I mean? Like,
well, it's because he was probably told he's probably told the exact same thing Luke was told and all that kind of stuff, where it's like the future's uncertain. But the thing is, the future this time was certain. And I think that also fuels into his fear with Padme.
Yeah, 100%.
Because, the future might be uncertain, but it wasn't with his mom, so why would this be different?
Exactly. I think that was an important part that they set up there, too. For sure. Yeah, no, that was pretty much it. One other point in Tatooine I thought was pretty funny was when he was coming back with his mom. I don't know if this is funny. That's maybe the wrong word to say. I'm like, this part was hilarious when he's coming back with his dead mom. No, not funny. I don't know. But, like, just when he's, like, walking in with his mom, he's literally eyeballing, like, the Lars family down so hard. Like, you see the look on his face? Like, he's got that look like, this guy's going to be sending some stormtroopers after him to toast those motherfuckers, Like, well, like later on, note to self, send some stormtroopers to toast these guys later on because they're pissing me off. Like,
the thing
that
is,
was the look, man.
He totally blames them, 100%.
Totally,
but the thing that he doesn't remember is that he's essentially a trained soldier, and they're farmers.
Yeah, they're nothing, yeah.
So I think that's part of the problem, too. I think that's... Yeah, I think I agree with you. I agree with that eyeballing thing. It's just, again, he views it like a child, and that's the frustrating thing about his character. He didn't grow up. Between episode 1 and 2, he didn't grow up.
Yeah.
And he should have. Like, yeah, he got taller, but, like, his mentality is still a child.
He's still very young, yeah, in that aspect. Nope. That's it for... And then, yeah, they totally stole 3PO. I'm down with that. I agree with you there. And, yeah, like, they totally just jacked him. They're like... I'm like, oh, he's in their ship. Okay, I guess they're taking him. Okay.
All right.
Cool, man.
But why wouldn't you just introduce 3PO as being, like, one of Padme's personal droids?
Yeah, I don't know.
Just makes more sense, but whatever. I
don't know. Anyway, that's it for Tatooine, though.
So we're going to hop to Coruscant for a brief second, and then we're going to hop away from Coruscant back to Geonosis. Okay. Because the rest of the movie's on Geonosis, so, like, I have a lot to say about it. But, like, who's listening to Jar Jar?
Dude, that's what I said. That's literally my next note.
Who in the Senate's like, oh, yeah, that Gungan, he's got some good points about who should be in charge. Yes, let's give Palpatine emergency power.
That's exactly what I said. I said, like, effing Jar Jar, man.
What
like,
the hell?
It's a trap, dude. It's a trap. Like, don't do it. But clearly he does it. But then I said, who in the Senate is like, yes, Jar Jar, great plan. Like, yes, Jar Jar. Out of all the Senate characters, like, he is the one I would believe the least. Like, it mind blows me. It blows my mind. It mind blows me that anyone would even
blows you.
Would consider listening to Jar Jar. It's hilarious. Good point.
Like that's I don't get it, man. I don't understand it. I don't understand how that changed the whole game, but it did. So Matt, you wanna take a trip with me? You wanna go to Geonosis? I want to talk about some cool things that happened on that planet.
Let's go on a trip to Geonosis.
So, like, first things first, the Separatists I love. I love the designs of them. I love the concept of, like, the Techno-Union. I like the banking clan. I like that idea.
Yeah.
That more and more. Like, and it leads into a cool subplot that was killed from episode 3 about, like, almost like a bunch of other, like, basically the rebellion people were gonna join the Separatists.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I love the introduction to that. I like seeing the development of the droids and like the change of the droids. I think that's really cool. Count Dooku is amazing. I love Count Dooku. I think he was a cool villain. I think he could have done more, but at the same time, Christopher Lee was a very old man at the time. And yeah, you said you didn't like the Droid Factory?
Oh no, it's not that I didn't like it. It wasn't like my favorite of all the set pieces. Like, it had a lot of really interesting moving parts and moments. It just wasn't my favorite out of all the set pieces, but it was still pretty good.
Mm-hmm. No, I can agree with that. And I had a fun, like, it was fun, but I don't think it was necessary.
Yeah.
I think it was a good time, but like even 3PO's head swap thing, like
oh,
I
okay,
enjoy
yeah,
it.
I'm not down with that. That ended up not being very funny. Yeah.
I like it because I think it's funny, but at the end of the day, it doesn't service the story at all. It's
felt
just
like,
literally, well,
yeah, it felt like
how can we have them in the battle?
Yeah, it felt like more of like a Jar Jar joke than a 3PO joke. So it didn't really work for me.
But it's still, I still like the moment where it's like basically he doesn't have control over his body, and he's like, die, Jedi dogs. Wait, what am I saying?
Yeah, that also brings up another really good question about droids, but you know, exactly how they function.
Like, well, apparently their heads are just interchangeable.
Clearly.
Like, I don't know, man. And it's the other thing too, when they get to Geonosis and like they start just like Anakin just starts mowing down Geonosians.
Yeah.
And like that's cool and all, but when you look at it from the perspective, technically they're invaders and those guys are just like, "Hey, you're breaking into our house. What are you doing?" And he's just killing them all.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, that's fine. He just killed a bunch of women and children too. So like, are we really surprised at this?
It's all fair game. We know they're the bad guys, so we're okay with it.
But are we? Should we be? Should we be?
I don't know. I agree with you. I think Count Dooku is pretty awesome. I really like his character, and like anytime you bring Christopher Lee in, it's just awesome. Like he brings just so much like nuance and like, what's that word? Gravitas to the performance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he just really grounds it. You believe the character. Like he was one of the best actors, hands down.
Even when he's BSing Obi-Wan, about like, oh no, this has been a terrible mistake. You shouldn't be in here at all. Oh my goodness, if only Qui-Gon was here. It's like, I want to believe you, but just because your voice is so amazing.
Yeah, and like for me, when I was watching it this time, like usually I'm like, oh yeah, like Dooku's actually like just lying. He's full of shit. Like blah 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 blah. Keep going. This time when I was watching it, and maybe it was just Christopher Lee's performance. Maybe he enticed me. Maybe he entranced me. You know, I just feel like the Dooku character, I feel like there's more to him than we actually really ever get to see in these movies. Like, when he talks about destroying the Sith, like, I believe him. Like, I don't know if he joined the Sith to ultimately end up his plan was ultimately to destroy the Sith. Like, I don't know if he's fully bought in on Palpatine's plan. You know what I mean? Like, I get he's like leading the Separatists and he's doing his part, but I feel like he had a different end game than Palpatine's end game.
As much as I hate the concept of Grey Jedi, Dooku is the closest thing to a Grey Jedi. Like Dooku and Qui-Gon, because they share the same kind of philosophies, but like I still hate that concept. I don't like the concept of Grey Jedi.
Yeah.
I think it's the dumbest thing, because it's like, no, you're not a Grey Jedi. You're just a dude with a lightsaber and force powers. You're not a Jedi.
Yeah.
Just like, it'll be like saying, like, you're a Grey Sith. No, you're a Sith, you're a Jedi, or you're just some person with force powers.
Yeah.
Like,
or you're a dude.
No, it's the Grey Jedi Code, where you're basically a Sith, but you're also basically a Jedi. And it's like, what are you talking about? None of this makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, man, like, I don't know. But I think the problem is, at the end of the day, people just like cool, weird concepts.
That's true.
And they're just gonna push that because it's something different.
Yeah.
And like, I'm all for different, but at the same time, it's just not. It's not necessary. I think it's just not. I don't know.
I just feel.
I think characters can have gray morals.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make them a whole new type of something.
Yeah, no, I agree.
They're just a character with gray morals.
And I think that's kind of where Dooku fits in, ultimately, at the end of the day. Because he's not a Darth Maul, who is just straight out like, dude, I'll kill people, I have no problem, whatever, I do my thing. You know what I mean? Like, he was there to kill people. Like, Dooku never killed Obi-Wan or Anakin. I mean, I guess he had the opportunity to kill them. One of them, at least, right? But he never really... He didn't. His strikes weren't to kill. They were to disarm at the end of the day. When you look at, like, the actual hits that he made against Obi-Wan. Like, he could have cut off Obi-Wan's arm and leg and, you know, like, made him literally a stump man. He didn't do that.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting just to see even, like, the end results of his conflict, whereas Darth Maul was clearly going in for the kill. He wasn't going in to maim. He wasn't going in to injure. He was there for the kill. But even just as, like...
Exactly...
But even, yeah, just as Dooku's saying that, I'm like, man, I feel like his endgame's different at the end of the day. Like, I feel like, again, he's not with the Jedi because he doesn't believe in what the Jedi are. But I also don't believe he's fully with the Sith.
Fully with the Sith.
Like, he's using the Sith. But, like, ultimately, I feel like his end goal would be to ultimately kill Palpatine in the end, right? To kill Sidious.
Arguably, that's a
Sith
mentality.
I guess that's a Sith mentality, but not necessarily to become the Lord of the Sith, but to end the chain of the Sith, right?
But also, I guess, is it the idea that he... Well, I mean, the idea, too, and I want to say, actually, Christopher Lee says it at one point in the documentary, where absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the same journey as Saruman.
Yeah.
And I think Prosser pointed this out to me, is that basically, like, Dooku and Saruman are the exact same character.
Pretty close, yeah.
Like it's literally, it's like, hey, I'm a good guy who was turned to the bad guy side just by, you know, complete and crazy circumstance.
I think especially, like, I don't know. And again, I'm just speculating, right? Like, there's nothing, I'm just going off some lines he communicated and how I interpreted them. Because before, I used to interpret them as, like, just 100% BS. He's just trying to lie to Obi-Wan. But I'm like, I don't know. This time I was like, maybe that offer was genuine to a degree. Not the, oh no, what a terrible mistake part. But, you know, when he's legitimately offering Obi-Wan to join him, I'm like, I'm wondering if there's not, like, something more, if that wasn't a legitimate offer. And he just owed it to Obi-Wan out of respect because of Qui-Gon.
Dude, 100%. It was 100% a legitimate offer because it's the Sith thing, though. He would literally have taken Obi-Wan as his apprentice, and then, like, it's the typical Sith offer,
yeah,
right?
Rule of two. Yeah, I get that, and then, you know, kill Palpatine and whatnot. I don't know if that was ultimately his end goal, but I also think it would have been interesting to see even, like, a cameo-esque role of Dooku in Episode 1, like his interaction with Qui-Gon when he's still a Jedi. Just to get, like, this little, I don't know, just to get this, like, little touch of who this character is. And then we see him, like, as, you know, his Sith moniker. Was he Darth Tyrannus? Tyrannus? I like that name. It's pretty slick. Darth Tyrannus.
No, like, I like that, too. And I like how it just kind of keeps it in the mystery kind of thing.
Yeah, but, I don't know. I was cool with, I would have been cool just seeing, like, Dooku in Episode 1 as well. I think that would have been interesting. Not, like, a huge part, but just when they're in Coruscant, right? Like, you see that interaction and how much Qui-Gon and him maybe care about each other. And then, you know, the death of Qui-Gon ultimately drives him away from the Jedi. And we learn a little bit more about that in Episode 2. I thought that maybe would have been a little bit more of an interesting aspect, just to add on to it. Not to change it, but to add on to it.
Well, arguably the big thing is they should have had just one villain throughout the whole series.
Fair enough, yeah.
So, like, one of my favorite parts of this whole thing, too, I think I mentioned it earlier, is the arena scene.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of silly, kind of campy, kind of weird.
It's
everything...
It's a great set piece, man. Like, it just is.
Like, here's the thing. I really like the first half better than the second half. I like all the stuff that happens with Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Padme and the creatures. Like, for years, I can always... It's the Reek, it's the Ackley, and it's the Nexu. Those are the creatures, and I've had that ingrained in my brain since I was, like, 11 years old. Because I love their designs. I love that whole concept. I think that's really cool. And I'm on board with, like, how each of them kind of combat their own creature. I think that's really fun. And then the Jedi show up, and I'm kind of like, okay. All right.
I thought the Jedi part was cool. We've never even got, like, in any of the movies, you know,
but
even
they all
since,
die so easy.
A lot of them do. A lot of them suck. They brought the worst Jedi, dude. Like, clearly.
That guy who gets shot by, like, by Django.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
the guy who has, like, the he replaced a Jedi Master. That's a Jedi Master.
Well, that's embarrassing.
And he gets... Well, I mean, but are we really surprised? Because look what happens to them in episode 3.
That's true. Clones just roll up in there and take them all out.
No, but even against Palpatine, he just murders 3 of them like nothing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. I just thought it was kind of cool. We got like kind of like a big Jedi battle-esque thing on the screen. I just thought that was cool. Like, again, the idea and the concept is really good, but like, again, the execution there is just kind of like, yeah. Like, it's cool. Like, the idea is cool. It's just, yeah, I kind of agree with you. Like, it could have been better.
It's one of those things of it could have been a bit more epic and grandiose, and it just kind of wasn't. But I liked it overall, though.
Have you seen those like cinematic trailers for that game, The Old Republic, where it's like all the big Jedi and Sith battles and stuff like that? Have you seen those trailers?
Yeah.
Like the ones that are like really badass. You're like, God damn, that's sick. That is something I'd love.
And that's
to
what
see.
I want.
Yeah,
that's what I. Hopefully, we'll get that in the future movies.
Yeah.
I also have a note here of sarcastic, and this guy's for the whole movie. Sarcastic Obi-Wan is just the best.
He is the best. Yeah.
Like the whole like, Master, we're here to rescue you. Oh, good job.
Yeah.
I love that. But no, I don't know, man. I don't know if maybe it's the way that Ewan McGregor plays Obi-Wan, or maybe it's the way that he's written. Maybe it's a combination of both, but like, it's just, he's got so much sass and it works so good for especially the age that he's at.
And it's appropriate for dealing with Anakin. Like, that's an appropriate response for Anakin. Like,
oh yeah. And it's like, it's just, I don't know. I love that. I love his mentorship. I just wanted more of it. The fact that we only got it at the beginning and the end, that's where I think a lot of the problems laid for me.
Yeah.
Also, Yoda talks really weird in this movie. It's like they forgot how to write Yoda. Because there are some times where he talks backwards too much, but then there's other times where he talks normal too much, and it's just like... Well, it's like around the survivors a perimeter create.
Yeah.
What? What?
I don't know. I didn't really notice that. Never really stuck out to me too much.
It's been bugging me for years. This has been like
that's a little too backwards, Yoda.
For
Come on, man. We need clear directions.
I don't know. Overall, the problem too, though, is this is about the time of the movie where I start checking out, and I feel so bad because there's a big lightsaber battle at the end.
Yeah.
And but I just totally, my brain just clicks out. I just check out of the movie at this point. I'm just like, yep, that's enough episode 2 for me.
Really?
That's it.
I'm like the opposite. This is like where I check in.
That's where
this is where I check out during the Anakin Padme shit. Like, I'm taking a nap, man. Like, I'm thinking of other things.
I think that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem is I've checked out so much by then that I reach this point. I'm like, well, I mean, the story's over.
This point,
we know what's gonna happen. And also, we get teased. I'm really upset about the promise of the Clone Wars starting, and then we just see it end.
Pretty much, yeah. In the next movie, it's the end of the Clone Wars. Oh, cool.
It's like, again, this is where Episode 1 should have started with the Clone Wars, and Episode 3 should have ended it.
I agree.
I don't know. How do you feel? How do you feel about... I guess we can talk about the Otodoko fight, or do you have more notes that you want to talk about?
No, I was just saying, the Jedi battle, I thought, again, concept, it was cool. Execution, not really great. One other little inconsistency, little flub that I noticed. So Ki-Adi-Mundi's, his lightsaber color changes when the clones arrive. So, after Yoda's like, perimeter create, it shows Ki-Adi-Mundi fighting, and he's got a green lightsaber, and then it shows all the Jedi loading into the gunship, and he has a blue lightsaber, and I'm like, homie, your lightsaber color just changed, bro.
So this is, so you're not saying before, because he's one of the ones who loses his lightsaber during the fight.
No, I'm not saying before. I'm literally saying...
You're saying after...
This is after...
It changes.
This is after Dooku's like, hey, guys, you want to surrender? And they're like, no.
So he's...
And this is...
So he's lost his lightsaber, and then he gets 2 different colored lightsabers in the next scene.
Yeah, pretty much. He gets, brought into that circle, right? And then when the clones show up, there's, one thing you can see him fighting with a green lightsaber, and then everyone's loading into gunships. So this isn't even, probably not even a minute in between. Like, this is, like, the next couple scenes. Then you see him helping people up, and he's got a blue lightsaber. So it's like, so you showed up with no lightsaber, you got a green one, and then somehow you lost that in between the 3 seconds between the last time I saw you and the other one. So it's clearly more of an editing inconsistency than anything.
No, here's the thing. They could have done something cool with it, where it's like, so the Jedi have, like, lost their lightsabers, or, like, they don't have enough lightsabers to go around, so you see Jedi, like, tossing lightsabers between each other to, like, fight with.
Oh, that would have been interesting,
like,
yeah.
It would have been something we haven't seen. It would have been dope. It would have been just, like, really cool choreography, because it's like, oh, man, here's a droid coming this way, and, like, I force push them. Oh, toss me that lightsaber. Back to you over there.
Yeah.
And, like, it could have been really cool, but...
But yeah, it's just one of those, like, little...
Every time.
It's one of those inconsistencies that I notice, right? Like, every once in a while you'll find an inconsistency in a film, you're like, and that's just one I notice all the time. I'm like, it's green, now it's blue. Okay. Like, okay, someone messed that up in editing, but that's fine. And then, yeah, like, the big-ass clone battle, I thought was pretty sick, man. Like, it was cool, like, especially when that one ship falls down and it's all, like, just the sand, and you got, like, the glow from all the blaster bolts. I'm like, that was cool. That was a cool moment. They had some good moments.
No, and, like,
it was a good set piece.
To me, it's the lightsaber fight at the end that kind of just, like, again, it was there, but it was more flash and not enough substance.
Well, yeah, like, it was a decent lightsaber fight, but it was not a meaningful lightsaber fight at the end of the day.
Well, by the time we get to 3, that's where the good stuff is.
And like, well, you had, like, you know, Duel of the Fates. That was a meaningful lightsaber fight. This one was not. This is probably actually the only lightsaber fight that isn't really meaningful if you're looking at episodes 1 to 6, because 4 is meaningful between Obi-Wan and Vader. Obviously 5 is between Vader and Luke, and then obviously 6 is again between Vader and Luke, you know, with the Emperor involved. All these lightsaber fights have meaning. This is the only one that's like, we've cornered the bad guy, and he's like, oh, I guess I gotta fight these losers and get out of here. Like, and he's not scared of them. Like, he's not concerned of them at all. He knows he has a considerable higher power. This is, again, like I said, most of this movie isn't about themes or character elements or character growth or anything. It's the tech demo aspect. And this whole lightsaber fight, whereas Anakin and Obi-Wan didn't stand much of a chance, they got wrecked pretty quick. The main star was when Yoda shows up. And they're like, look what we did with Yoda. He now fights with a lightsaber. What is up? And that was the whole point of that lightsaber battle. Like, that, it was the point to show off, at the end of the day, Yoda and what he could do. Because then Anakin and Obi-Wan were pretty, like,
useless.
Yeah, they got wrecked pretty quick, man. Like, they did not... They looked like those lame Jedi who just died in the, you know, Geonosis Coliseum. Whatever that hell that thing's called. But...
Yeah, Coliseum sounds Coliseum. Right. No, they weren't in the Coliseum. Never mind. They're somewhere else. They're in, like, some kind of dock or loading dock.
No, like the Coliseum earlier, when all the Jedi died there. Oh. That's what they were acting like when it came to Dooku. Like, they were so outclassed by Dooku. He completely outclassed them.
Oh, straight up.
Completely. And even, you know, you got, like, Dooku breaking the roof, and Yoda's got to catch it and throw it away. So it was, again, like, I just think that's the heart of this movie. Like, and I think that's the problem with the movie. The set pieces are all good. It's all very visually interesting, at least at the time. Like, now you can definitely see the wear and tear in the age of the CGI. But at the time, I think a lot of this movie was created just being like, look at this shit we can do now. And not necessarily so much in the storytelling. Again, it connected the dots between 1 and 3, but it didn't have anything new to say. Like, it didn't bring anything new to the table, other than CGI stuff.
No, exactly, and but at the point at the core of the movie, that's what this was. It was all about CG. It wasn't about characters or good character moments. Yeah. It was about. It's the same problem that Goblet of Fire suffered from. Right, like
I haven't seen that movie forever, so I don't regret.
It's all spectacle. It's not anything substance wise. It's all look at we can do a CG dragon now.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. I love CG dragons.
I don't know what else I even have to say about episode 2 other than like. Maybe to end on a note of Padme and Anakin, but again, they get married at the end of this movie, and that just makes... I don't know. What do you have to add about this, man? What do you like? Honestly, at this point, this is where I just check out. The movie just makes me check out, and I just don't. I don't feel anything anymore. I'm just like,
you're just like, I'm tired of this movie. I'm tired. Here's my big question. Why did they never look in the evil-looking part of Coruscant for Sidious? Like, if he's going to be anywhere, of course he's going to be at the part of Coruscant that looks like an evil lair. Like, come on, guys. The sky is red. Why aren't we checking this shit out?
Because when Mace Windu was a young boy, he had a conversation with Yoda where they were standing up on top of the Jedi Temple, and Yoda's like, look at this kingdom. Everything the light touches is yours. And then Mace Windu's like, but what about those dark, shadowy places? And then Yoda's like, we must never go there.
We must never go. So,
exactly. And that's exactly why. Man. It's basically, it's the Lion King. That's 100% what
Damn,
it is.
Man. I wish I would have known. Having that background knowledge just puts this film in a whole new context for me.
Expanded universe, man. That's why you got to do all this extra reading, you know? That's 100% factual canon. That's what happened.
I love it. What other, like, another note here that I have, just kind of at the end, just a couple little random thoughts because obviously I think we're done more or less talking about, like, you know, the beats of the film, man.
I think we've tapped this movie as much as we can, which again, still quite a lot.
Still quite, a lot more than I thought we were going to be honest. I thought this was going to be quick. But it was a little longer.
And it just turned into...
One thing I noted too is, like, the relationship actually between Mace Windu and Anakin seemed to be okay in this episode. There was no real conflict between them. And even as far as Mace Windu reminding Obi-Wan that, like, hey, he's supposed to be the chosen one, man. Like, he's kind of on Anakin's side at that point. Like, I don't know about side, but he's definitely in more support than doubt. Then again, episode 3, the relationship goes back to crap. Like, just down the shitter, right? But... down the pooper.
There's an inconsistency because it just, even with the prequels, it depends on the movie at the end of the day. So it's just, I don't know, man. It's just exhausting. As I said, like that's the thing is, like, even at the end of the conversation, at the end of just thinking about this movie too much, I'd rather go back and watch almost any other Star Wars movie than Attack of the Clones.
You're just like,
it's one of my... It's
done with this movie.
I'm happy with the nostalgia feels. I'm glad I still have those. But when I actually have to think critically about this movie, it just makes me
It just hurts your brain.
Because, like, critical thinking-wise, it's not good. It's objectively not good. It's subjectively not good. But it makes me feel warm and fuzzy.
Okay, I need you to boot your brain up, though, for one more second. Because the one thing I was looking for, I was like, what is the theme of this movie? Other than CGI spectacle, what is the theme of this movie? And I honestly...
love?
Like, it's not love. Like, being a creep gets the girl. Oh, good. Like, that's the message. No. So here's this random, I don't even know if this is the theme of the movie. It's so stupid. But it stuck out to me. And then my brain kept making connections as I went through the movie. And I was like, this actually, in a weird effing way, makes sense. Okay, here it is. I'm going to lay it down on you. I think there's a theme there between water and sand going on in this whole film. Starting with literally the point where, like, Padme and Anakin are talking about. She's like, oh... like, the waters, we used to spend so much time in the water, and it's so cool. And Anakin's like, oh, sand is rough and blah, blah, blah. And then Anakin kind of refers to her, Padme, as, like, soft and smooth. Like, it's not like sand, you're soft and smooth. And, like, to me, it made sense. It's like, okay, so are they referring to Padme as water, Anakin as sand? Like, he's more rough, he's annoying, he gets everywhere. Mm-hmm. Anakin sand, dude. Padme. Okay, just wait. It goes deeper though. Padme water.
No, I think I'm on the same path as you, man.
So they mention the water and the sand. Now the planets in this film, what do they feature? Water and sand. Minus Coruscant. Naboo has water. Camino has a lot of water, and then the two later planets are all sand. What happens on those planets? What do those planets represent? Ultimately, at the end of the day, life. Naboo is full of life. Camino is literally creating life. death. All the ones with sand. Tatooine, his mom dies. Geonosis, all the like Jedi and stuff. There's a lot of death that happens there. So now you're saying it's not just water and sand, but now it's representing life and death. Padme is life. Padme is the one who brings her own children into the world, but Anakin ultimately equals death. So the theme is life and death, and their connection now together. Padme is life, Anakin is death, and now they are one.
Dude, there's an extra step too.
How deep is that?
There's an extra step.
Not deep in it, like the thought of it, but like how deep down the rabbit hole did my brain have to go to put that together?
So what are the two armies that fight each other?
Life and death, yeah.
One that's from Camino, one that's from Geonosis. Yeah. Water, sand.
Yeah.
Fighting each other.
Isn't that painful?
Living beings.
I'm like, I literally wrote, I'm like, is there a water and sand theme going on here? Like, and as soon as they said those lines,
I want to tell you you're wrong, but I think you're right.
As soon as they said those lines, my brain just started connecting all these dots, and I'm like, oh my god, there's a theme of water and sand. Water brings forth life, sand is death. And then you had the droids and the clones in there. You're correct. And then even equal to Anakin and Padme and their future going forward. Padme brings forth life. Anakin brings forth death. They are the representations of life and death in Star Wars. I'm like, come on, guys.
That's such pseudo theme BS, man. And like it's 100%. There was probably some conversation where they talked about that. And that just makes me more upset.
I don't know, man. It just hit me this last view through. As soon as I heard the water and sand, and then everything started connecting, and my brain just went deeper and deeper and deeper, and I was like, my god.
Oh boy. Can we just I want to go to a happy place, Matt. I don't know where that is, but this whole thing, just why?
Here's a happy place for your idea. We got a couple weeks, and we'll talk about episode 3. A couple weeks, then we'll be on to the original trilogy, and that sounds pretty awesome to me.
But why did we start with episode 1, 2, and 3? Why didn't
honestly,
we start with
I don't
4,
even
5,
know.
And 6?
Because it was the first one, so we just connected that to one. I don't know. I don't know. We just did.
But we could have had more fun confusing people, because we could have been like Star Wars special episode 1 about episode 4, and it's our 5th episode.
That would have made way more sense. That would have been the way to do it. That's it though. That's it. I mean, ultimately,
are you stuffed,
dude?
Or are you just kind of like?
So, like, I'm not
stuffed.
I'm stuffed to the point though where it's like I need a nap. Like I need to lay down. Like I can't even handle it. You know, after like Thanksgiving or Christmas, you eat so much. You're like, I'm just gonna go lay down, guys. But, like I can't stand up and breathe. I have to go just lay down over here.
Yeah, but Thanksgiving and Christmas is at least good food. Whereas like this is like
a McDonald's mukbang where you just eat it.
It's a McDonald's coma. Yeah. That's what this is. I'm just like. Yeah, I've had a great time in this conversation. It has been a blast, but I'm so upset at the subject matter that we have covered today.
And then the water and the sand theme, like just the cherry on top, right? And I'd love, and honestly, I'd love to be like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen or heard, and it's totally wrong. But I'm like, but it makes sense. I can't even like deny that. It makes sense to me. Does it make sense to you?
Maybe we're just delusional from episode 2 just made us so delusional. Yeah. That's what makes sense.
You know what? I bet watching through this movie has just made me delusional. I wouldn't even doubt it.
100%.
Again, the movie's decent. It's more of a tech-orientated movie than an actual deep character-driven story. So the set pieces are great, but there's no meaning behind them. And they just, I don't know, they're just the next step it's just the next step. It's like literally, again, like I said, the dot between episode 1 and 3. They just had to connect the dot, and then they can move on. That's kind of what this movie was. It says nothing new, brings nothing really new to the table. It's just like, this is the next step we have to take, so we're taking it. And CGI.
Yep.
That's kind of it. And water and sand. CGI, water and sand, baby.
Is it that time, Matt? Is it time for us to wrap up?
It is time. It is more than time. I can't believe we talked about this for so long. And again, like you said, it's just been... I'm good. Don't...
trauma brings people together.
Yeah, that's it, man.
All right, everybody, that has been another episode of A Feast of Films. Regardless of how tired I sound, I had a great time. I enjoyed talking about this. I love talking about these films with you, man. I enjoy just diving into them, even though it's not super deep conversations. It's just fun, and it's still been good. I still really enjoyed this, and I can't wait to talk more next week.
I second that.
So, with that being said, I'm Ethan R. Hill.
And I'm Matt Black.
And we'll see you all next week. Enjoy your week, everybody.
Bye-bye.
So long.
Toodaloo.
And may the Force be
Dun,
with you.
dun, 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 dun,
Are we singing the entire, like...
Oh, man.